This is Off the Cuff, and I'm Steve from TorahFamily.org. What I'm presenting here today is simply our thoughts of what we see as possible fulfillments of the first 5 trumpets in the book of Revelation. This sequence of events could play out any given year, and as I've mentioned in many other teachings, they could play out any time of the year. That being said, let's begin. Let's first lay a foundation from the prophet Isaiah. Isaiah 24. See, Yahweh is going to lay waste the earth and devastate it. He will ruin its face and scatter its inhabitants. This whole chapter discusses circumstances that surround a massive, in fact, a worldwide shaking of the earth. It could be an event like this, which truly jumps the birth pains into high gear. For more understanding on the birth pains as discussed by Yeshua, please see our teaching, The Birth Pains. Many people forget the prophet Isaiah is the one who declares the resurrection to take place before the birth pains even begin. This is also discussed in our teaching, The Church of Philadelphia, and our written teaching, Pre-trib. We believe these 3 teachings are paramount in understanding the harmony of the Scriptures regarding those events. Now, if you just rolled your eyes and thought, oh great, this guy's a pre-tribber, meaning one who believes in the pre-tribulation resurrection. Well, please remember, I preached the post-trib for 28 years. That's right, I preached the post-tribulation resurrection for 28 years. So, it's not like I came to this conclusion easily. Please consider these 3 teachings before passing judgment on fellow believers. Now, let's go through the first 5 trumpets of Revelation and consider the potential fulfillments. These are simply thoughts we believe are very plausible and shouldn't be overlooked or quickly dismissed. First, we need to ask ourselves, do the trumpets in Revelation make these events happen, or are they simply proclaiming what's already coming as a result of something else? Namely, the result of the earthquake in Isaiah 24. We tend to believe they could be the result of that earthquake. We see them potentially as natural events pertaining to the birth pains as mentioned in Matthew 24. Natural judgments that come about on the earth because of disobedience. Again, as noted in Isaiah 24. So, let's begin. But let's begin a few verses before the beginning of the trumpets. A few verses that we believe is all too often overlooked. Revelation chapter 8, starting in verse 3. Another angel who had a golden censer came and stood at the altar. He was given much incense to offer, with the prayers of all the saints, on the golden altar before the throne. The smoke of the incense, together with the prayers of the saints, went up before God from the angel's hand. Then the angel took the censer, filled it with fire from the altar, and hurled it on the earth. And there came peals of thunder, rumblings, flashes of lightning, and an earthquake. Then the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared to sound them. Now here we see an action given with a result on the earth. A result that ended in an earthquake. An earthquake that takes place just before the trumpets. This is the Greek word used here for earthquake. It's also rendered as a shakedown. We believe it's possible this shakedown may very well be what causes the sequence of events in the trumpets that follow immediately after. A shakedown just like we see in Isaiah 24. Something which is also referred to in the book of Haggai. The verse in Revelation says, "Then the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared to sound them." Again, possibly implying these trumpets are the result of that earthquake. Trumpet number 1. Revelation chapter 8, verse 7. The first angel sounded his trumpet, and there came hail and fire mixed with blood, and it was hurled down upon the earth. A third of the earth was burned up, a third of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. Most have believed this to be asteroids falling from the sky, and that's definitely possible. However, the text doesn't say where the source of the hail and fire mixed with blood comes from. It simply says it was hurled down upon the earth. If I gathered a bunch of rocks from the ground, could I not hurl them back down to the ground by initially throwing them straight up? Of course, that which goes up must come down. So, what if the source of this hail, fire, and blood was all the active and potentially active volcanoes on the earth? Now think about it. Hail and fire by themselves can easily be understood for an asteroid. But where would the blood be? However, take a volcano and you can easily understand how it could look like hail, fire, and blood by way of the magma. Is it not possible that the earth could force magma up and out, giving the very appearance of hail, fire, and blood mixed together? Couldn't an earthquake that rocks the whole world cause such an event? Well, time will tell. But we believe this is very plausible. Now, I understand this scenario may be difficult to imagine since, well, we've never seen something of that magnitude before. But many scientists have already said that when the caldera under Yellowstone National Park goes off, that it will explode with a force 1,000 times more powerful than that of the eruption of Mount St. Helens back in 1980. That one volcano has potential to be 1,000 times more powerful than Mount St. Helens. That in itself is hard to imagine. Yet, if most every volcano on Earth is thrusted into activity at the same time from a global earthquake, the devastation could truly be unimaginable. Yet, could there really be a shaking that would affect that many fault lines on the Earth, which would in turn affect that many volcanoes? Well, here are some thoughts to consider. Did you know that the Ring of Fire has 452 volcanoes? 452! It's home to over 75% of the world's active and dormant volcanoes. So, 3/4 of all active and dormant volcanoes sit on the Ring of Fire. It's sometimes called the Circum-Pacific Belt, the Circum-Pacific Seismic Belt, and, of course, the Pacific Rim. About 90% of the world's earthquakes and vast majority of the world's largest earthquakes occur along the Ring of Fire. Allow me to repeat that. About 90% of the world's earthquakes and the vast majority of the world's largest earthquakes occur along the Ring of Fire. So, as you can see, this scenario is more than plausible in just the first trumpet alone. Let's continue. Trumpet number 2, Revelation chapter 8, verses 8 and 9. The second angel sounded his trumpet, and something like a huge mountain, all ablaze, was thrown into the sea. A third of the sea turned into blood. A third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. Many believe apocalyptic language shows a mountain to represent that of a nation or a country. It's been said that the earthquake Japan had in March 2011 literally shifted Japan by 8 inches. So, if a 9.0 earthquake did indeed shift Japan by 8 inches, what kind of earthquake would it take to make the island of Japan go completely under? May sound silly at first, but let's not forget that Japan physically sits on the Ring of Fire. Could Japan be that huge mountain that is thrust into the sea? Remember, apocalyptic language shows a mountain to represent a nation or a country. So, this could be possible. Could this same earthquake that will thrust all the volcanoes into action along the Ring of Fire actually cause Japan, or any country, to go completely under? Well, only time will tell. However, if it's true, an isolated earthquake of 9.0 caused it to shift by 8 inches, is it really that unthinkable to consider that a megaquake that shakes the whole world could submerge it? This would obviously cause a tsunami of unbelievable proportions. That would explain the 1/3 of the ships being destroyed. And if it would be Japan, that would explain the waters turning to blood by way of their nuclear reactors that have plutonium that is said to be 1,000 times more lethal than that of Chernobyl. We believe the plausibility is well within the spectrum of reality. Trumpet number 3. Revelation chapter 8, verses 10 and 11. The third angel sounded his trumpet, and a great star, blazing like a torch, fell from the sky on 1/3 of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of the star is Wormwood. 1/3 of the waters turned bitter, and many people died from the waters that had become bitter. Many have believed this to be an asteroid, and we agree that is very possible. But the problem is that we never see the impact of this star in the verse. Yet we know it affects 1/3 of the rivers and 1/3 of the springs of water. But how is the question? As we'll see in the 5th trumpet, a star shown in the blowing of the trumpets can actually be a fallen angel. We'll cover that in more detail in a moment. Yet, in this case, as with the 5th trumpet, we believe this star to be that of a fallen angel. Could this fallen angel somehow worsen the effects of the first 2 trumpets on water sources? In the light of natural events, this trumpet could very easily be caused from the remaining effects that simply compound from the first 2 trumpets. It says the waters are turned bitter. Think of that for a moment. Between the toxic ash of the volcanoes and the radiation from all nuclear plants that will be working its way around the world, do we really think that water supplies are not going to be affected? And remember, the trumpets are declaring what's coming. They aren't making them come. The fact that we hold to this star being a fallen angel will make more sense when we cover the 5th trumpet. Before we move on, it's interesting to note a parallel here. Please notice how the waters become bitter. Numbers chapter 5 talks about the woman who is accused of adultery. It discusses the process of finding out if she is guilty. It just so happens that the process includes her drinking bitter water. Some have even suggested that this parallels also that of when Moses came down from getting the stone tablets and found many of the people dancing around the golden calf. What did Moses do? He ground up the golden calf and put it in water for the people to drink. It's believed that those who were killed that day were identified as the adulterers because they were sick from that which they drank, the bitter water. Meaning, the water with the gold in it made them ill, and those who didn't dance around the calf were not affected by the water. Why? Because they weren't the adulterers. Those who were made sick from the water were then struck down, because those were the adulterers. Could it be in the end times that the Father gives those of His people who are accused of adultery bitter waters to drink as prescribed in Numbers chapter 5? Then those who are found guilty will be stoned in the final bowl of wrath as mentioned in Revelation 16? For more on that, please see our teaching, Heaven and Earth Testify. The element of Numbers chapter 5 is also discussed in our teaching, the Eternal Covenant. Moving on. Trumpet number 4. Revelation chapter 8, verse 12. The fourth angel sounded his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of them turned dark. A third of the day was without light, and also a third of the night. Notice here how on the fourth trumpet, a third of the sun, moon, and stars are turned dark, just like that of the first trumpet, where we see a third of the earth, trees, and grass are burned up. After volcanoes erupt, ash clouds can cover multiple square miles within hours before settling, just like the Iceland volcano did in April of 2010. It sent ash, smoke, and steam miles into the air, covering multiple square miles. Now, imagine 450 volcanoes erupting together within 12 to 24 hours. It says that a third of the sun, moon, and the stars turned dark. Interestingly enough, when you look at a map, it appears the ring of fire covers just over 1/3 of the earth. It doesn't take much imagination to see that this could easily be caused by the first 3 trumpets. So the first 4 trumpets as a whole could easily be simultaneously back-to-back events that are actually tied to one massive earthquake, the global earthquake of Isaiah 24. But we see the remaining trumpets are set apart from these first 4. Compare Revelation chapter 8, verse 13. As I watched, I heard an eagle that was flying in midair call out in a loud voice, "Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, because of the trumpet blast about to be sounded by the other 3 angels." And now, trumpet number 5. Revelation chapter 9. The 5th angel sounded his trumpet, and I saw a star that had fallen from the sky to the earth. The star was given the key to the shaft of the abyss. When he opened the abyss, smoke rose from it like smoke from a gigantic furnace. The sun and sky were darkened by the smoke from the abyss. We'll continue with this text in a moment, but first, look at how the star that fell was given a key and then opened the abyss. Now, does that sound like a falling star or an asteroid? Or does it sound like a fallen angel? This is why we see the star in the 3rd trumpet to also be that of a fallen angel. Continuing on with the verse. And out of the smoke locusts came down upon the earth and were given power like that of scorpions of the earth. They were told not to harm the grass of the earth, or any plant or tree, but only those people who did not have the seal of God on their foreheads. They were not given power to kill them, but only to torture them for 5 months, and the agony they suffered was like that of the sting of a scorpion when it strikes a man. During those days, men will seek death, but will not find it. They will long to die, but death will elude them. The locusts look like horses prepared for battle. On their heads they wore something like crowns of gold, and their faces resembled human faces. Their hair was like women's hair, and their teeth were like lions' teeth. They had breastplates like breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was like the thundering of many horses and chariots rushing into battle. They had tails and stings like scorpions, and in their tails they had power to torment people for 5 months. They had as king over them the angel of the abyss, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek, Apollyon. What you are about to hear may sound utterly absurd, and, well, we kind of agree. However, if you were told the Red Sea was going to be divided right in front of you, we're pretty sure you would have said, that sounds absurd. So with this in mind, we don't ask that you believe what we say. We just ask that you keep it in the back of your mind as something to be considered. There has been a lot of silence from prophecy teachers on these verses on the fifth trumpet. So, we'd like to give you what we believe fits a possible interpretation. Now, we know the scriptures say that history repeats itself. Please remember this. We'll come back to it a little later. That being said, let's read 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. The coming of the lawless one will be in accordance with the work of Satan displayed in all kinds of counterfeit miracles, signs, and wonders, and in every sort of evil that deceives those who are perishing. They perish because they refused to love the truth and so be saved. For this reason, God sends them a powerful delusion so that they will believe the lie, and so that all will be condemned who have not believed the truth, but have delighted in wickedness. Yahweh himself sends a powerful delusion that seems to come before the lawless one and his counterfeit miracles, signs, and wonders, and the evil that he deceives with. It's because of this powerful delusion that those who refuse to love the truth will be deceived by the workings of the lawless one. It must be noted here that the true test of a prophet or miracle worker is if they follow and teach the Torah, the instructions of Yahweh. Even if his prophecies come true and his miracles take place right before your very eyes, if he teaches anything other than the commandments of Yahweh, he is declared a false prophet in the eyes of Yahweh. This is found in Deuteronomy 13. Please consider. If a prophet or one who foretells by dreams appears among you and announces to you a miraculous sign or wonder, and if the sign or wonder of which he has spoken takes place, and he says, "Let us follow other gods, gods you have not known, and let us worship them," you must not listen to the words of that prophet or dreamer. Yahweh your God is testing you to find out whether you love him with all your heart and with all your soul. It is Yahweh your God you must follow, and him you must revere. Keep his commands and obey him. Serve him and hold fast to him. Now regarding 2 Thessalonians, what form of powerful delusion could make people turn from Yahweh and follow after a lie? What kind of event could happen that would convince people to follow the Antichrist and his miracles? What if fallen angels made themselves manifest by way of aliens? As strange as that may sound, what if? We already know that the scriptures indicate the fallen angels mated with women in the Old Testament as given in Genesis chapter 6. Yet, not much is given to us in how they revealed themselves in those days. What if they manifested themselves as a higher life form from another planet? Is that really too hard to believe? Maybe for some, but knowing that the scriptures mention this has happened once before, are we to believe it can't happen again? Remember, Ecclesiastes 1:9. Knowing there are indeed accounts giving record of this in ancient civilizations, and how the scriptures give record to this in harmony with those other accounts, why should any of us be surprised with this being at least a possible fulfillment to the fifth trumpet in Revelation 9? Isaiah 46:10 says, "I make known the end from the beginning, from ancient times what is still to come." So if the fallen angels came down in Genesis 6, wouldn't this verse in Isaiah imply it will happen again? There are those who oppose this belief as being something plausible, and we respect that. But in our research, we have not seen enough evidence to say this should be ruled out as something plausible. Consider even Jude 6. "And the angels who did not keep their positions of authority, but abandoned their own home, these he has kept in darkness bound with everlasting chains for judgment on the great day. Some believe this is talking about judgment coming on the fallen angels. However, I believe it's saying the fallen angels are being held and will be released to bring judgment on man. In fact, this very verse could be talking about the locusts that are released out of the abyss, meaning they are held in the abyss until the time of judgment. And here the time of judgment has come and they're being released, just as implied here in Jude 6. In reference to making known the end from the beginning, it's interesting to note that the locusts of the fifth trumpet are given power for 5 months. 5 times 30 days, making 150 days. Now, compare that to the days of Noah. Genesis chapter 7. The waters flooded the earth for 150 days. Are these dots we should be connecting together? We're not sure, but it's interesting nonetheless. Again, time will tell. There are ancient accounts that refer to the aliens as the Anunnaki. The popular TV show Ancient Aliens discusses this as well. They believe these were the ones who were in Mesopotamia, and they believe the Anunnaki are going to return once again to enslave much of mankind. Interestingly enough, the Anunnaki may very well have been those mentioned in Numbers chapter 13 when Moses sent the spies into the land. Compare Numbers chapter 13. They went up through the Negev and came to Hebron, where Ahiman, Sheshai, and Talmai, the descendants of Anak, lived. Hebron had been built 7 years before Zoan in Egypt. The phrase, the descendants of Anak, in the Hebrew actually says the descendants of the Anakim. Notice how the Hebrew Anakim is strikingly similar to the Mesopotamian Anunnaki. A little farther down, Numbers 13:28. But the people who live there are powerful, and their cities are fortified and very large. We even saw the descendants of Anak there. Again, the Anakim. Farther down still, Numbers 13:31. But the men who had gone up with him said, "We can't attack those people. They are stronger than we are." And they spread among the Israelites a bad report about the land they had explored. They said, "The land we explored devours those living in it. All the people we saw there are of great size. We saw the Nephilim there. The descendants of Anak come from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our eyes, and we looked the same to them." Again, the Anakim. The biblical accounts of the recordings of the Anakim could very easily be those noted as the Anunnaki from the Mesopotamian records. Both give accounts to them being very large individuals, and both accounts are dated to being thousands of years old. Since we know history is cyclical, this may very well be the powerful delusion that Yahweh sends so people will believe the lie of the Antichrist as mentioned in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. The world has not only been brainwashed to believe in aliens through movies and TV shows. They've been brainwashed to believe in good aliens and bad aliens. Somehow, some way, I believe that will most likely be how things play out to deceive. Though the New Jerusalem doesn't come down on earth until after the millennium, we currently see the New Jerusalem coming down in the sky first to start everything off. I believe this could be the wake-up call to the 10 virgins as given in Matthew 25, which could also fulfill Revelation chapter 1 verse 7 with everyone seeing Yeshua come down. This could also be Yeshua fulfilling what is given in the Torah about going to war with another country, to offer it peace. But if it refuses and engages in battle, you can lay siege to it. This is where the New Jerusalem would be considered an alien ship with the hostile aliens. Now, I know there are many who hold that the New Jerusalem will be a perfect cube from this verse in Revelation 21. However, please remember, pyramids are laid out like a square on the base just the same. For more on that topic, and all of this actually, please see the interview I did titled Aliens, the Bible, and the End Times. We realize that all of this is a lot to take in. And like all others who voiced their thoughts on these verses, we don't claim that our thoughts are without error. We simply hope that they help us all to open our hearts to the Spirit and not just hold on to an interpretation simply because, well, that's what we've always believed. When it comes down to it, time is the ultimate test for all interpretations, and we pray that we will all be open. As we pursue His understanding in all of these things, may we never forget the Lord's own words. I make known the end from the beginning, from ancient times what is still to come. I say, my purpose will stand, and I will do all that I please. Well, that's all I have. Think about it. Pray about it. But more than anything, be a doer of the word and not a hearer only. Until next time, Shalom.